So nice to see you. All right. Good morning. Welcome back. How are you? Good to see you. So you've excited. I can take a by up here. Okay, good. I'll be here. I'll just be one ear. I'm sure we're in the morning. Awesome. Thank you. That's great. One of my favorite things about summertime. And our biblical passage this morning is the parable of the sower, so it all fits in. Thank you. Any other announcements? Great. Then let us take a minute and fling the peace of Christ to one another. If you see someone you don't know, introduce yourself after the service or over at coffee hour. And let us continue now as we call ourselves to worship. We gather today to worship the God who created us. The God who equips us for service. The God who loves us without end. The God who never gives up on us. Joyful hearts, let us worship our God, whose name is love. Our opening hymn is Praise to the Living God, which is number 8 in your hymnals. Please rise as you're able and let's sing together. continue together with our unison prayer. Loving God, so often we come to you at a at a loss for the right words, the right deeds, the right feelings. We know all is not right, but we cannot always say with certainty what is wrong. There are deep divisions between us and others. There are too many who live in poverty and fear. There are too many horrific stories, and we often don't look hard enough for the hopeful ones. So we pray to you to make things right, and to make us right with you and with each other, that we might be a part of the hopeful stories that can change our community. Turn us around from that which damages toward all that heals and brings joy.
Our scripture reading this morning is Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 through 13 and 16 through 23. It's the first of several parables that Jesus told to make people think about how God was at work in the world and how they should respond to that. Listen to God's words in these verses. That day Jesus went out of the house and sat down beside the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he climbed into a boat and sat down. The whole crowd stood on the shore. Jesus said many things to them in parables. Look, the sower went out to scatter seed. As he was scattering seed, some fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it. Other seed fell on rocky ground where the soil was shallow. They sprouted immediately because the soil wasn't deep. But when the sun came up, it scorched the plant and they dried up because they had no roots. Other seed fell among thorny weeds, and these grew and strangled the seedlings. Other seed fell on good soil and produced a harvest. In one case, the yield of in one case of 100 to 1, in another 60 to 1, and another 30 to 1. Everyone who has ears should pay attention. Jesus' disciples came to him and said to him, "Why do you use parables when you speak to the crowds?" Jesus replied, "Because they haven't received the secrets of God's economy, but you have. For those who have will receive more, and they will have more than enough. But as for those who don't have, even the little they have will be taken away from them. This is why I speak to the crowds in parables. Although they see, they don't really see. And although they hear, they really don't hear or understand. But your eyes are fortunate because they see, and your ears because they hear. I assure you that many prophets and righteous people wanted to see what you see and hear what you hear, but they didn't. Consider then the parable of the farmer. Whenever people hear the word about the kingdom and don't understand it, the evil one comes and carries off what has been planted in their hearts. This is the seed that was sown on the path. As for the seed that was spread on rocky ground, this refers to people who hear the word and immediately receive it joyfully. Because they have no roots, they last for only a little while. When they experience distress or abuse because of the word, they immediately fall away. As for the seed that was spread among thorny plants, this refers to those who hear the word, but the worries of this life and the false appeal of wealth choke the word, and it bears no fruit. As for what was planted on good soil, this refers to those who hear and understand and bear fruit and produce. In one case, a yield of 100 to 1, in another case, a yield of 60 to 1, and in another case, God grant us wisdom and understanding to learn from this passage.
When it comes to the parables of Jesus, the various people who translated the Gospels into English took upon themselves not only to translate the words, but to also give us some guidance by putting in the headings that you see for significant stories. None of those is in the original manuscripts. In fact, there aren't even chapter and verse numbers in the oldest manuscripts we have. It's just a page of words without punctuation. There's nothing wrong with those headings in and of themselves. And I'm sure the translators all meant well and were expressing their understanding of the text. However, there's often more than one way to understand a story, particularly with parables. And so it's a good thing to notice what's being said. And today's parable is a good example. If we were to open the Pew Bible, which is the Revised Standard Version, the title would say, The Parable of the Sower, leading us to believe that it's mainly about the farmer. One of the translations I like to read is one by a biblical scholar named J.B. Phillips, who did his translation in the 1950s. And he titles it The Parable of the Seed, leaving us to think it's primarily what was being sown. And then the Common English Bible, which is a 21st century translation, and it's the one that we read this morning, calls it the parable of the soils, making us think it's about the dirt. None of them is wrong. And there's more than one way to read a story. These various attempts at understanding a story remind us that parables weren't allegories or fables. It wasn't like if you remember like the tortoise and the hare, and then you kind of go, well, this means this and this means this. That's not what parables were. It's not so easy to just look and think every single thing in the story has a direct connection to something else. In reality, they were a teaching device, a common teaching device in Jesus' time. Kind of stories that were riddles designed to make people think. They weren't supposed to be easy to understand. So it's no surprise that our translators, as well as those who heard the parable when Jesus first taught it, have sort of wrestled with how to best understand what the parable's about. And so they kind of latched on to one idea and said, this. Jesus wanted people to wonder, to ask questions, to dig deeper into the meaning, so they could see what we could discover. This particular parable is the first parable in Matthew's gospel. Becomes the first parable of a whole string of stories that Jesus told to illustrate how God moved and worked in the world. Throughout the gospels, Jesus told parables like this one, and they often started, the realm of God is like, the economy of God is like, and then he would talk about farms or pearls or mustard seeds. Then there's a whole string of parables that start with a certain man had two sons. He always has two sons, all the parables. Which, since I have one younger brother, we read both of those closely. I was grateful that the elder brother usually came out looking pretty good, except for the prodigal son story. But Jesus was inviting his listeners to use their imaginations when they thought about God, because God is the ultimate parable of sorts, and by that I mean we can't really explain God. We encounter God. We can trust and listen and follow, but God remains full of surprises. One of my favorite hymns says, "For the wonders that confound us, for the wonders that astound us, for the truth that still confounds us, thanks be to God." So in that spirit, I'm not going to try to explain the parable, deciding that I have a clear indication of what it means isn't really much help. Instead, I want to offer some thoughts bouncing off of those titles as a way of letting the parable perhaps open our hearts to a deeper conversation about who God is and the kind of relationship God invites us to share. So let's start with the sower, the farmer. Many of us in the room are gardeners. We get a pack of seeds. It often comes with instructions on how to plant those seeds so that we have the best chance of getting vegetables, right? How far apart to put them, how many to put in a row, how you got to come back if you plant beet seeds and thin them out a little bit so they don't all get too crowded up. Sometimes you need to start them inside and wait till they're seedlings to give them a shot. We worry about temperature of the soil, of the air, not to mention what kind of soil we have to contend with. And then not every plant likes the same thing. When we have a really dry summer, some things grow better. When we have a really wet summer, other things grow better. We plant things to harvest them. So when it comes to this parable about a farmer that's just sowing seed and the seed falling in lots of different soil, the first question has to be, why wasn't the farmer more careful about how he was planting things? If the point of sowing is to reap a harvest, wouldn't the farmer want to be more efficient? So if we read the parable of the sower, it becomes a parable about the character of God, about God's economy, about God's community. And when we watch the farmer just slinging seed every which direction, it becomes a parable about God's extravagance and his extravagant generosity. We opened our service singing the hymn, "Praise to the Living God." And we could go through our hymnal and find other songs that highlight different attributes of God. I'm willing to bet you could pick any hymnal you want, and you'll never find a hymn extolling God's efficiency. That's not how God works. God is extravagant, not efficient. That's the picture of the sower. Look at the wildflowers and the fact that we still are discovering types of insects and plants that are new to us as human beings, but are all over everywhere, in places human beings can't get to. We're still finding the deeper they can get in the ocean or the farther they can get into some of the jungles, or finding things that we never knew were there. God's imagination is expansive and extravagant. The universe expands beyond our imagination. There are about 47 shades of green in the forest that surround us. God is not efficient. God is extravagant. God knows there's more than enough to go around. And so that's the picture of the sower. Just sowing the seed to see where it goes. And so in that sense, even to Jesus' listeners, the farmer in the parable is odd because their sowing wasn't to maximize the harvest, but to just sow as much as possible. Which then begs the question, so what were they sowing? What was the seed? As Jesus said in his breakdown of the parable in the last half of the passage that Rick read, the message The seed was the message or the word about God's kingdom, God's community. But it's not just one word. We go back to all that we've been reading through the Gospel of Matthew, how Jesus continued to show that God is with us and we're with each other. How Jesus sent his followers out to feed people, to help those who were sick, to break down barriers, to fight the oppression of the empire, to love passed hand to hand. The seed's not a speech or a formula. It's a way of being in the world that echoes the prophet Micah. What does God require of us but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with our God? Love is a seed that we never run out of. We can sow that seed everywhere, anytime. Like the sower in the parable, we may have our hopes that the seed will take root wherever it lands, but the point's not the harvest. The point is the planting, the sowing. Kindness and justice are not investments looking for a good return. They are how we spread the extravagant love of God. And that brings us to the soil, to the dirt. It's tempting to see the soils as categories of people and the way they respond to God. Of course, when we do that, maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but when we do it that way, we're most likely to imagine that we are shining examples of the good soil. And I mean we are, but look at us, come on. And it's also tempting to think that those labels are at least semi-permanent. Bad soil is bad soil. But let's not give in to either of those temptations. Instead, I want you to hear the words of an Episcopal priest named Michael Marsh, whose sermon on this passage I read, and this helped me. He said, "It's easy and tempting to categorize ourselves and others as one of the four types of soils: hardened, rocky, thorny, and fertile. What if they aren't categories of people, but aspects and ways of being in each of our lives? What if we all have parts of ourselves that are hardened and rocky and thorny and fertile? What if the four soils are descriptive of how we live and relate to God and others and ourselves? Maybe the four soils aren't judgments, but diagnoses, information to be considered." His words give us other questions, I think. What if we hold all of some of those soils the way our yards and gardens do? What if the soils are less about how we always are, but also good pictures of how we can be different at different times in our lives, how we can be receptive and open to God's love, or not, depending on our circumstances or our emotional state. Sometimes when love comes to find us, our hearts are wide open and it can easily take root. Other times, if we're hurt or grieving or angry, we may choke it out or harden ourselves in His presence. As Marsh says, Jesus wasn't issuing a judgment as much as offering a description. Here's how things are sometimes. God's love shows up at moments when we're not ready or able to accept it, but that doesn't mean that love didn't show up, and that doesn't mean that the love doesn't quit coming. The sower keeps sowing, throwing out love in every which direction, as though there were an inexhaustible supply, which there is an inexhaustible supply, and hopes that it will take roots in us so that we too can grow into extravagant lovers of the Word. I quoted my favorite hymn earlier, but I left out a line that I want to go back and read now. For the wonders that astound us, for the truths that still confound us, but most of all, that love has found us. Thanks be to God. So it doesn't really matter what we title the parable. We can call it the parable of the sower, or the parable of the seed, or the parable of the soils. The heart of the story is the same. In the economy of God, there's an inexhaustible supply of love. And our extravagant, wonderfully inefficient God keeps sowing those seeds in our lives, no matter what our circumstances are, no matter how ready we are to receive it. It just keeps coming in hopes that we too might be extravagant lovers of our world. God is with us, and we are with each other. Thanks be to God. Let us continue together singing the hymn that's printed in your order of service. God of the fertile fields, please remain seated as we sing. As we come to our time of prayer for our church and our world, we remember Fred Tiedemann, Rhonda Krasinski, Harry Jansen, Carol Fitzsimmons, Randy States, and Jean Van Camp. Are there other joys and concerns to share this morning? Beth?
Very depressed was to live in a neighborhood and absolutely previously occurred with the water. The water is established as parking on the chance that has grown and grown into a grown now. So she's probably going to have 130 years to live now. She's a young person, she teaches, it's been very hard. The family has a lot of friends. Husband is paralyzed. He can't walk anymore, and he's not alcoholic. So it's a dual thing that's going on in their life, and it's very difficult. So we would all pray for Denise, and hopefully very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others?
I have a joy. It's not only disease. Lovely done 80 years.
Glad to have you with us this morning. Are all of you on the hockey team? We play on the hockey team, the good team. We're really glad you're here. Really impressed you got up at 9 o'clock on Sunday. Are there others?
Just had one concern. My cousin just got hospitalized with some liver issues, so we just keep Brianna in the prayers. But one joy, Jackie wants to say hello to everybody. She's been on the ship for about a month now. She's really adjusted well, and she still has a prayer shawl you all gave her, and she's thinking of you all and just says, she's hoping you all have a great summer. So thank you for all your support for us. Thank you.
Just ask that you say a prayer for the people in Waterbury that were displaced by that awful fire. Also that you pray for the firefighters that were injured at that scene. And thank the Lord, my son was not one of them.
Yes, thank you. As small a state as we are, in Guilford, I didn't even hear about the fires. So thank you. But I'm grateful that your son came through the fire. So, now our news yesterday in Guilford was we got word late Saturday night that they found E. coli in the water, so we had to boil water all day yesterday, like we were on in the Amazon or something. I don't know what. But it kind of ended up being fine, but it was sort of strange today. But thank you. And was it one house in particular that burned in?
It was a city block. There were at least 15 people displaced, and the firefighters were there. My son was there from 6 o'clock in the evening till 2:30 in the morning.
Oh my goodness.
And he's recovering.
Good. Yeah, I
but
bet.
he was not injured. Thank God.
Good. Thank you. Are there others? Yes.
Just an update, I want to say that everybody again for praying for my son. Now they put some kind of a thing on him that gives him electric shocks so that his muscles will recover. And so everything is better. Thank you.
Others. As you know, Rick.
Go England! Go England!
As you know, I spent several days this week in Texas with my friend Bert, my lifelong friend since college, who's dealing with some cognitive changes, and I just wanted a chance to see him. And we had and his wife Julie, we had a deeply meaningful week together. What's going on with him right now is he'll in the middle of a sentence, and it's almost every sentence he'll just be words again. And so sometimes it was a little bit like we were playing password or something like that. He would say, and then Julie and I would try to guess. And it was really hard to see him that way, but also I was grateful that we got 4 days together, and 4 very meaningful days. So please pray for Bert as they can continue to work to find out some kind of diagnosis and see if there are ways that he can be helped, questions that will be answered in the coming weeks. So I ask for prayer for him this morning. Sandy. Yes. Thank you. Yes, I had my second cochlear implant surgery in the morning, and it doesn't require me to stay in the hospital, and I will be here, as I said, next week. I just for the next 4 weeks, my stereo will only have one speaker that works, and so even more than usual, I'll be going, what? So, but I'm grateful. Thank you. I appreciate your prayers. Let's take a few moments inside. Oh, sorry, Charlotte.
Sandy took the words right out of my mouth. I wish you the very best.
Thank you. Thank you. You had no idea when you called me as pastor there would be quite this many medical procedures. I know. Thank you. Let's continue now with a time of silence, and then I will close our prayer. God, in the midst of all that goes on in our lives, the things that frighten us, the things that concern us, the dangers we encounter, the things that give us hope and joy, the love that finds us again and again. We are grateful for your enduring presence, that we, like the hymn Diane played at the beginning of the service, that we can say, it is well with my soul. May our hearts be open to the love you sow in us daily, we pray. In the name of the one who taught us to pray, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. As we have offered our prayers, now we make our offerings of our gifts to our ministries here and to God's work in the world. Lord, dismiss us with your love. So we don't plan our meetings, but periodically when I go in there, she's behind the counter and she has been encouraged. As I said to some of you, as I look forward to this procedure this week, one of the things that has given me, I don't even know how to make it feel, concern, anxiety, is just the fact that following the service, I'm going to rely on battery-operated devices for 100%. That's a little intimidating. So this week, I was headed out to the grocery store, and Ginger said we could stop by Walgreens and pick up a prescription for me, and when I went in there she was. And I said, I'm really glad to see you, because I'm having my second implant surgery this week. And without hesitation and with exuberance, she said, that's such great news. And I felt something inside of me calm down. then she said, "Set me Jesus." And I relaxed even more. And since that time, I have, her gift to me was a sense of peace of how the procedure would go tomorrow, and the days and months and years that unfold after. Just because of that chance encounter and the seeds that she sowed in my life. The point of my story, alongside of the deep gratitude that I feel for her and her willingness to risk it. That's the kind of impact we have on each other. That's the difference that we can make. Be wonderfully extravagant and incredibly enriched in the way that we live. Just as God does for us. I worship at that. What our service